Hi everyone, this demo is going to be about mixing grays, the big difference between digital and traditional. Now, one of the big differences, cost. I could add or subtract as many different values of a digital color I want with no cost whatsoever. Traditionally, if I start working with cobalt colors or some of the series 3, 4, and even 5 values, then it's going to get very expensive if I keep dropping colors and adding new ones. That is why I always try to keep the same colors, not to mention that once I start mixing them and getting specific color combinations from the mixed colors, I became familiar with those and I want to stay with what I'm familiar with. Now, digitally, I could also add colors that are unique to only maybe some brand names and also some mediums. In other words, oils, there might only be certain colors, acrylics, there might only be certain colors, and watercolors, there might only be certain colors. So with that in mind, I could have any of those colors in the digital palette where I cannot in a watercolor palette. Later on, when I start working with acrylics, which I will, those colors are also different from my watercolor palette. Another difference is in digital, I don't have to worry about a secondary color mixing. In traditional, I have to keep that in mind. For example, cerulean blue is actually cerulean blue green shade, where there's also a cerulean blue red shade. Now, cerulean blue mixed with yellow gives you some very nice greens, whereas cerulean blue red shade mixed with yellow can give you some really muted or even muddy greens, something you have to be aware of, traditionally speaking. Now, coming from the traditional background, since I was always familiar with specific colors mixed together, I tried to duplicate that into my digital palette. To go over those quickly, black is something I have only used for masks in my previous demos. The gray is only the pencil. The unbleached titanium is actually one of my acrylic colors if I work in opaque. The titanium white is an acrylic color. Winsor lemon, Winsor green, Prussian blue, French ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, cerulean blue, cobalt turquoise light, cobalt violet, permanent rose, permanent magenta, burnt sienna, raw umber, quinacridone gold, Winsor orange or cad orange, Winsor red or cad red. Now here's the colors I added: dioxazine purple, potter's pink, cobalt turquoise, which is darker than cobalt turquoise light. Now, to experiment with those two traditionally could get very expensive, especially since they're so close in value and obviously color. Terra vert, sap green, and sepia, which sepia is burnt umber with a little bit of black. This is how I was getting my silvery gray, mixing it with French ultramarine, digitally speaking. Now, what I did do was figure out that my permanent magenta right here was one of the colors I just never used that much. I wanted to take it out and replace it with a burnt umber that I really missed. So what I did was take it out, rearrange some of these colors, slid them over, and then put my burnt umber right here, number 12. I'll go to that palette next. Here's the first revision. Here's where the burnt umber is now, right next to the brown matter. I took the reds and slid them down a little bit and put in the burnt umber after the permanent magenta was taken out. Now, I first originally thought that these two might be good next to each other, but then once I started quickly painting, I found out that I wanted to keep them separate. I get a nice silvery gray with the burnt umber and the French ultramarine. Then I get a nice purplish gray with the brown matter and the French ultramarine. So mixing them two together would give me a muted gray that's neither one or the other. Now that would be fine in some cases, but I don't want them that close, so I decided to move them. Here's another change I want to make. I want to add that dioxazine purple digital color to my traditional palette. Now, what I want to do is eliminate my cobalt turquoise light. This is a color I just do not use very often. Maybe in a Caribbean scene would be great for future demos, but what I could do then is also mix the turquoise blue with the Winsor green, and that would give me very nice values of a turquoise blue and a turquoise blue green for a Caribbean scene. Now remember, those colors are coming from the sunlight reflecting off of the white sand bottom. This is important to know because this is the same effect as atmospheric perspective. Atmospheric perspective is humidity and particulates in the air that filter out the colors from distant objects, especially mountains, where they will appear to be bluish only because of all of the humidity between the viewer and that distant object. Here's a quick comparison between any type of freehand painting and photography. In painting, I could add that atmospheric effect anytime I want, just by making my distant objects more blue. In photography, if it's a clear, dry day, I am not going to have that atmospheric effect in my landscape photographs. It will also make objects appear much closer than they are because of that lack of atmospheric perspective. So if you want to portray distance in a landscape photograph, it is difficult to do without that atmospheric effect. Now let's move over to the drawing board just to see how much I'm going to completely revise my watercolor traditional palette and the reasons I came up with for such changes. Yes, I did. I dug them all out. I just used a regular putty knife and I dug them in and they didn't come out too bad at all. Once I took out the permanent magenta that was over here and then took out the cobalt turquoise light that was down in here, it wasn't bad at all. So I decided to just relocate them all because the red and oranges, I wanted them towards the red and oranges more. They were over here. Even though I didn't use those two colors very often as a pure color, I still would like to mix them. And then all my blues will be right here. And this one is a little bit juicy yet. This is alizarin crimson. I just squirted a good bit out right before I did this. And then this will be the new home of the dioxazine purple or Windsor violet. And then this will be a reelin up here. But what I want to do is make test swatches on this particular type of book right here. This is just a Arches, and it's going to be, I will open it up, it's going to be a test sheet of all of them. What I'll do is I will just put a color here like French ultramarine and then 4 different columns of what color it's going to be mixed with, because I want a pure color to a pure color and then how it mixes in between. And then I will save these and keep them. They'll always remind me, what will I get if I mix odd colors like a burnt sienna with a cobalt blue or anything in between? I will get greenish grays, reddish grays, purplish grays, silver grays. They'll all be grays, but if I put more browns in, there'll be a warmer gray. If I put more blues in, there'll be a cooler gray. So all of those different variations of grays will all be determined on how much colors I use of each, and especially if I even add a third color, then that will complicate things a little bit more, but it will be an endless amount of combinations of color of what I'll end up with. Now here's a sample of what I'm talking about. This is a reelin. This is one of the colors I'm going to keep. That will be right here. And then this is the burnt umber going into the French ultramarine blue. And it's a very interesting combination of color that it's very granular on the French ultramarine side. But what I want to do is just make those kind of cheat sheets for myself and keep them. But what I'm also going to do is I picked this one up. It's just a regular Soho Urban Artist. And what I'm going to do is keep this. Now this seals nice, real nice and tight. These will be the colors I'm taking out, but what I'm going to do is put them in this particular palette, and then I'm going to keep these, and since it seals up airtight, I'll keep the sponge with a little bit of water in it, but I'll put some of these in of some of the colors that I have but don't use very often. Sap green, Antwerp blue, various colors I've tried over the years that when you start getting into tubes this size, I have a whole tube of this left. And I may want to use it for something in particular. This is ultramarine violet, which is also another very nice color. I want to be able to use these in upcoming paintings or demos just to experiment with them, just to see what kind of color combinations I get with a lot of these different colors. So I'll put them out and I'm just going to have a secondary standby palette, if you will. And then this way I'll be able to still use those colors. Here's the permanent magenta and here's the turquoise, the cobalt turquoise light. And I'm just going to keep them on hand, ready to go. Here's one thing I want to show you, just traditionally speaking, that's a big difference. Both of these are French ultramarine. I hope you can see the difference between the colors on the outside of the tube. This is a French ultramarine, this is a French ultramarine. They are both Winsor Newton, but the big difference is the colors on the outside of the tube are quite different. This is closer to a cerulean blue than a French ultramarine. But all I have to do is look at the color code number, PB29, and this one is right there, PB29. That is the color code that I need to know, that as long as they're both 29, I'm not worried about what the outside of the tube looks like. And that is something else you also have to watch for, traditionally speaking. Let's show you one last thing, and then that will be it. Okay, this is the painting I'm currently working on. It's only about 60, maybe 50% done. I will superimpose the picture up here, and then my palette would be right down in here as I'm doing the demonstration. But this is aluminum, and this is an engine and a fuel pump off of an old bulldozer that was just left abandoned. Now what I want to do is just do it in a traditional watercolor way. I will have this demo up soon from start to finish in 4K, but I wanted to show you right in here is that French ultramarine blue with the brown matter, and it's giving me kind of a purpley gray, which is working really well with this old greasy muddy engine. Now I have a ways to go into cleaning this up, and just the small detail work is usually what takes more time than just blocking in the colors. But once I get this done, then hopefully I will be able to keep my palette the way it is, but then also never have I rearranged my palette completely halfway through a painting, so we'll see how that goes too. But in the meantime, in future demos, I'm going to make those test swatches and go over them, and then I will be able to scan those in to the PC, and then that way I want to compare them to digital of the same colors just to see how close I could get them. And remember, everything I have is calibrated, so I'll be able to tell how close it is. And then unfortunately, whatever you see on your monitors might be a little bit different, but maybe not too much. So this is what I'm going to do with my colors, and going back to my permanent transparent watercolors, traditional speaking, the John Pike is going to be rearranged once and for all, and I'm going to leave it as it is. Again, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions about either digital or traditional, please ask, please subscribe, please like. And again, as I always say, until I see you out in the field or back at the studio, thanks for watching.